Hey everybody, welcome back to the SuperBake podcast. I'm your host, Baker. Let's talk about stuff. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. So today I'll be talking about the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. Got a chance to see this movie a little bit earlier this week, and this is definitely going to be one of the more interesting reviews that I've had to do for a film, because this is definitely one of the more interesting movies that I've watched in recent memory, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. Directed by Dan Kwan and Daniel Scheinert, also written by those two as well. Movie stars, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing these names, Michelle Yeoh, Stephanie Hsu, Ki-hye Kwan, who you may know as Short Round from Indiana Jones, as well as Data from the Goonies, James Hong, the legendary actor from Big Trouble in Little China, and then Jamie Lee Curtis. Oh, and I forgot to mention this, Michelle Yeoh, you may remember her from the movie Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So the cinematography done by Larkin Seipel, music by Sun Lux. Production companies include AGBO, Leyline Entertainment, AIC Films, Year of the Rat, and then distributed by A24. Looks like the movie had a budget of $25 million. Not very much at all. Kind of surprising considering the movie. And so far, as of recording this, it has grossed $18.6 million in the box office. So looks like it's going to almost make back its, I'd say it's probably going to make back its budget in the global box office. So to go over the plot, and just very briefly, Michelle Yeoh plays a woman who owns a failing laundromat in the United States, who is basically getting audited by the IRS, led by Jamie Lee Curtis. She has her daughter, Stephanie Hsu, and then her husband, played by Ki-hye Kwan, who try to assist her in running the laundromat, but it's clear that Yeoh's life is in disarray in this movie, and she just feels like she can't seem to get everything going right for her. Her daughter also introduces her to her girlfriend, and Yeoh is definitely very concerned about that because she's afraid that her father, played by James Hong, is going to disapprove of that. And so while at the IRS building, talking to Curtis's character, Yeoh experiences her husband basically gets tapped into from one of his other personalities from another universe called the Alpha Universe. And he basically tells Yeoh's character that he thinks that she is the chosen one that will help him stop the creature or a person that is threatening to destroy the entire multiverse. And so basically Yeoh has to try to use her newfound abilities to tap into the other alternate versions of herself from other universes to try to stop this powerful evil force that seems to be threatening all of existence. And that's basically the entire story in a nutshell. And I'm not going to go into it too much more than that because, one, it's such a weird story. This, and also, too, this movie is just so insane in all the right ways, in my opinion. I think it's pretty safe to say there's going to be pretty heavy spoilers from here on out. I'm going to be talking about the plot and what happens and just a few things that happened in the movie, as well as my overall thoughts on it. So just kind of be forewarned if you haven't seen it yet, but I do recommend seeing this movie for sure. I think it's fantastic. There is a scene in this movie, to give you an idea of how crazy this movie is, there is a scene in this movie where a man shoves an object up his ass in order to fight the main character. And that's not even one of the craziest scenes in this movie. It is batshit nuts in all the best ways. I cannot believe how much I loved this movie. It's so weird. It's so crazy, but I loved every minute of it. Just some of the things that I really liked about this movie is, one, the acting. And I was absolutely floored by how good the acting is in this movie. I mean, really, everyone does a great job in this movie. Jamie Lee Curtis seems like she's having fun in her role. It seems like she's just enjoying it. They definitely did a good job of making her look very kind of nasty looking in many ways. It's not a flattering look that she has in this movie, but it's so funny. And you can tell she's just having a blast in this. James Hong, who I adore. I mean, like I said before, Big Trouble in Little China. I mean, he's one of my favorite actors. He's so great. And again, in this movie, he seems like he's just having a lot of fun as well, just like Jamie Lee Curtis. And I looked it up, and the guy's like 93 years old. And so to see him still doing movies like this, he's great. I think he's one of the best in Hollywood. But the three main cast members, Michelle Yeoh, Stephanie Hsu, and Ki Hee Kwan, are like amazing. They are so, all three of those are so, those characters are so amazing. Like, Yeoh, to be honest, I never saw Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, but I know Michelle Yeoh was considered, she received a lot of critical praise for that movie, and she is great in this movie too. They do a great job of really grounding her character in this situation, in this moment, and her reactions feel very genuine, like how you would react to being in this situation where you find out that there's other versions of you across an infinite amount of multiverses out there. It feels very realistic, and I like the fact that this entire movie basically takes place inside of an IRS building, which I think is just so funny. Her daughter, played by Stephanie Hsu, is great because I don't want to go into too much detail about her character because it plays a big part in the plot later on, but man, the acting from Stephanie in this role is like, I'd never even seen her before in anything else. At least I don't believe that I have. And she, like, the daughter is just unbelievable. Like the moments between her and Michelle Yeoh where they have like these, these mother-daughter conversations, and you get to see how strained their relationship is, which is also a big part of the story. It's a big element in the story. Like, that is just, it's so gut-wrenching at times, and you really feel for her character for sure. Like I said, I didn't know who this actress was before this movie, and yeah, she really surprised me with how good she is in this. But I think the standout performance for me was Ki Hee Kwan. Like, Kwan, like, I did some research on him, so he's like 50 years old now, which I didn't know that. He's kind of been out of the spotlight for a long time, because I know he was Data in The Goonies, he was Short Round, of course, in Temple of Doom, and I think he did a little bit of acting in like the early to mid 90s, but I looked it up, and apparently he retired from acting around the year 2000, and he just hasn't been acting in like, a little over 20 years, which is depressing that 2000 was over 20 years ago. But regardless, he kind of retired from acting, and he is, for a guy who has not been acting in a while, he is phenomenal in this movie. There are scenes in this movie where he has to, in this movie, it's the way they handle the multiverse idea is a little bit different than how they do it in shows like Rick and Morty or in the MCU. So in those shows, it's like the way the characters contact other versions of themselves throughout other universes is they actually physically go there and physically interact with them. In this movie, in Everything Everywhere, the way they do it is they don't actually physically go to the universes. They use these devices in their ears, kind of like earpieces, I guess. And so they use those to essentially tap into the minds of their alternate versions. And so they can basically harness their memories and their abilities. So, for example, Michelle Yeoh, there's a part in the movie where she needs to tap into a part of herself that's a really good martial artist. So she uses the device and then taps into an alternate version of herself from a reality where she is really good at martial arts, so that way she can fight better in her reality, if that makes sense. I'm going to try really hard not to make this confusing or confuse myself, but that's kind of how they handle it. They don't physically go to the other universes. They use technology to essentially hack into themselves from other universes, into different versions of themselves, if that makes sense. Kind of like hacking into a computer in a way. That's really probably the simplest way that I can put it. And the way they have to do it is they have to do weird things, like I can't remember what they call it. I think they call it like their gate, in order to allow themselves to tap into alternate versions of their personality. So like they have to do something really strange. So like Kwan's character, like when he first goes to, when Alpha Kwan shows up to take over Kwan's body, the way he does it is he has to eat like a whole thing of chapstick, which was so disgusting. There are so many scenes in this movie where like the audience in the theater that I was at, where they were just completely grossed out by what they were seeing because of just what the characters had to do. To go back to my point before, the guy that shoves that thing up his ass, that was what he had to do to tap into another version of himself, basically. There's a lot of that in this movie where you see people just doing batshit insane things. If you've watched the movie and you understand the context behind them, you'll get it. But if you haven't, you'll have no idea what's going on. This is definitely a movie that you have to watch from beginning to end to really understand. And even then, you may not still completely understand it. At least I feel like I still don't understand everything about it, and I watched every minute of it. But anyways, I got off track. Ki Hee Kwan is amazing in this movie. So because he has to constantly flip back and forth between the alpha version of himself and the version of himself that's in the current universe that the movie takes place in, his personality switches back and forth just like constantly. And the way he does that, it's so seamless. You really find yourself believing that this really is a guy who's being inhabited by different versions of himself. Michelle Yeoh does that really well too. She does that throughout the movie once she kind of learns how to tap into different versions of herself. And it's amazing. Like, both these characters are they're so great. But Quan specifically really stuck out to me. Like I said, for a guy that really has not been acting for a couple decades, you would never know it. His transition back into the acting world is seamless. And honestly, I hope we see a resurgence of this actor in more movies. And I've seen him in interviews and stuff. Like, I saw him on Jimmy Kimmel, and he seems like just such a really cool, down-to-earth guy. I remember loving him in The Goonies and in Indiana Jones. So he just seems so happy and so friendly and jovial. Like, I really hope that this is not going to be the last movie we see him in. I would love to see him in more. And like, I mean, he's only 50 years old, so I feel like he's still got quite a bit left in him if he wanted to continue acting. And I really feel like after this movie, he should. And his performance is so good. Like, I'm going to say this right now. If Quan and Michelle Yeoh, if neither one of them are nominated for an award for their performance in this movie, I'm definitely going to be pissed, because they both deserve it. So yeah, the acting is just fantastic all around. Yeah, the cinematography, I really like the look of this movie. There's a lot of, I mean, in terms of like style, there's not much. I don't think it has its own unique style necessarily. But I love the setting, the different settings this movie takes place in. Like, again, like I said, it all takes place in an IRS building, but the way they're able to use the multiverse to kind of make the building feel infinitely big is great. It's great. And just overall, I just really like the look of the movie. They do a good job of making a lot of scenes feel very, very claustrophobic, especially near the beginning of the movie, when we're kind of focusing more on Michelle Yeoh's character. Like, when we see her day-to-day life, running the laundromat, there's definitely this claustrophobic feeling in the laundromat as she's trying to, navigate around there, help out the customers, as well as kind of deal with her daughter and her husband and all that, and the drama going on between them and the IRS. And then when they're in the IRS building, there's a great funny scene with them and Jamie Lee Curtis's character where they're at her desk talking to her, and Jamie Lee Curtis is just being like kind of a complete fucking slob and just like chugging down drinks and eating snacks and stuff and eating these cookies they made her and stuff. Like, she just seems like she's just having such a good time just being kind of a piece of shit in this movie, and it just cracks me up. I love Jamie Lee Curtis. Like, she's phenomenal. I like her more and more as she's gotten older. I think she's definitely she's such a great actress, and I think she's supposed to be in the live action Borderlands movie, if I'm not mistaken, whenever that's supposed to come out. But yeah, I like the look of this movie. It's definitely cool for sure. The music is great as well. I really like the music. There's not, I mean, as far as the soundtrack goes, I mean, I wouldn't say, it doesn't stand out to me as far as being like super revolutionary, but there are a few scenes, particularly in the opening credits, where they play like that big loud, like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like that loud music they used to play before movies would start back in like the 90s. I can't remember the name of that company, but they would kind of play kind of like that kind of music where there's like this big crescendo, and then they play the title Everything. There's a lot of that in this movie. I think the music's used pretty sparingly, but it's used effectively and to really elevate a lot of scenes. So I think they do a great job there. And then as far as like how I would define this movie, one thing I've been hearing a lot of people say is that they're having a difficult time like placing this movie into any specific genre. And I would say that that's pretty fair. This really doesn't fall into any one particular genre, like solely, in my opinion. Like, it has action sequences. It has some crazy sci-fi things that happen throughout the movie. It has some really good heartfelt moments as well as some really well-acted scenes. But I wouldn't necessarily classify it as any one of those specifically as far as the genre goes. In many ways, this movie almost kind of feels like its own genre of film. And I really love that about it. But the action scenes are fantastic. Like I said, the scene where the guy shoves the thing up his ass to fight the main character, so fucking funny. I remember everybody in the audience was just busting out laughing during that scene, because Michelle Yeoh is fighting these two guys, these two security guards in the IRS building who, again, they switch with the alpha versions of themselves. So they're taken over by different versions of themselves from the other universe, from the alpha universe. And so they're fighting the main character, and they have the whole time they're fighting, they have these trophies shoved up their asses, and it's so great. And you see the trophies like while they're fighting, and it's just so absurd. That's just one example of like the absurdity in this movie. There's a scene in the movie where they do like it's like a they do like a parody of like Ratatouille, like because the mom, I think she gets confused and thinks the movie is about a raccoon and not a rat, and so there's a scene later in another universe where Michelle Yeoh, and there's a universe where she's a chef, and one of the other chefs, she's jealous of him because he's better than her, and she finds out the reason why he's better is because he has a raccoon living under his hat that's pulling his hair just like in Ratatouille and making him cook. And that whole fucking scene is just so great, like when she exposes the raccoon and then the animal control has to take him away, and it's so great. And then she ends up helping the guy trying to get the raccoon back by, I shit you not, getting on his shoulders and pulling his hair. Michelle Yeoh gets on this guy's shoulders and starts pulling his hair so that he can run after the truck to get his raccoon back. I know how that sounds, and believe me, I can't believe that it was something that happened in the movie, but it does, and it's fantastic. This movie is almost like a live action. In some ways, some scenes in this movie make me think of like a cartoon come to life, but it's done well. That's the thing. I feel like in lesser hands, this movie could have been awful, but it's not. It's so great. There's so many great, crazy scenes in this movie that I just absolutely love. There's another scene in this movie where there is another universe where Michelle Yeoh has hot dogs for fingers, and that is like one of the grossest but funniest fucking scenes in the whole movie. It's like it's her and Jamie Lee Curtis is in the scene too, and like she has hot dogs for fingers as well. Like in this entire universe, everybody has hot dogs for fingers for no fucking reason. They just do. That's the only difference. And like, oh my god, and like they use their feet like hands. So like Jamie Lee Curtis is playing the piano with her feet, and it's, oh my god, it's so funny. And like the two of them, her and Michelle Yeoh are like a couple, and so like there's a scene where Yeoh is like putting her toes on Curtis's face, like almost like in sort of like a sensual, seductive way, like she's trying to seduce her, and it's like, oh my god, it's so funny. There's a lot of scenes like that in this movie that are just like, they almost make you kind of uncomfortable because of just how absurd they are. But one thing that I like about the movie that it does really well is there's also a lot of really good like emotional moments where the movie really takes some time to kind of let the characters breathe and let you kind of get to know them. Like a big aspect of Michelle Yeoh's character in the movie is that her husband is basically giving her he wants to divorce her, and that's actually a big element in the very beginning of the movie, is that she discovers his divorce papers, and that comes to play out later on in the movie where we discover that Yeoh she discovers in other universes that there's one universe where she never actually even hooked up with her husband. They never even went out. And because of that, she became really famous, like a famous, I think, movie director or filmmaker. And so like she kind of laments in that universe about not ever actually taking the time to meet her husband and go out with him. And there's a really powerful moment in the film where her husband actually is able to kind of smooth things over with Curtis's character in the IRS, and it leads to this really big revelation for the main character, which I won't go into too much, but because I think that would kind of take away from the overall theme of the movie. But I like that about that movie, and I think one thing that it does is to kind of go back to my original point, is it really gives Ke Huy Quan a chance to really shine as like kind of the rock of this film. In many ways, his character is kind of the rock of his wife and her life in this universe, the universe that this takes place in. But he's also kind of like the emotional core of the movie itself too. He's just such a happy-go-lucky person. You can definitely see a lot of short round in his character. And the scenes where he needs to be funny, he can be funny. And the scenes where he needs to be serious, he can absolutely be serious. And even in some scenes, depressing. Like, you feel sorry for these characters, and you can definitely relate to them. You can relate to their plight, which I think is amazing. It's amazing that for a movie about the multiverse and about all these batshit insane scenarios that take place, it's amazing that the three main characters are so relatable and so grounded in a movie that is anything but. So, yeah, I mean, I don't want to go into too many spoilers about the plot beyond what I've already said, because I just feel like this is one of those movies that you really should experience for yourself. I know I say that in a lot of my podcasts, but I really feel like this is one of those movies. Like, I think you should definitely just check this out and just kind of come to your own conclusions about this. As far as my overall thoughts go for this movie, like, yeah, this was. I can't believe how much I liked this movie. This was definitely a surprising hit for me. That being said, like, I do think this movie is a bit of an acquired taste. I don't think it's going to resonate with everybody quite the same way. I would advise, if you go in to see this movie, definitely keep an open mind. It's going to throw some very weird things at you. The scenes that I talked about before, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much in this movie. There's so much shit that happens. Like, I can't even remember everything that happens in this movie. I try to keep a mental catalog of everything that happened, but like, I just too much that comes at you. The way I would describe this movie is, if you've ever heard there's a restaurant called Longboards. There's one in Kansas City. I think they started out in California, but it's a wrap shop. Like, they make wraps and stuff. And they just put like the most random shit in the wraps that they make, and they're fucking delicious. Like, there's one they call like it's like the Samoan, I think is what they call it, and it's like shrimp and like avocado, pineapple, pork, and other stuff like that, and like, I want to say bacon and ham, and it sounds like it should be the most disgusting thing ever, and it's amazing. Like, it's very busy. All the wraps are incredibly busy. That's how I would describe this movie. It's like a Longboards wrap if it was a movie. There's a lot happening. It's very busy, but damn it, is it good. It's amazing. So yeah, I would definitely say keep an open mind with this movie. Definitely watch the whole thing from beginning to end. Don't come in halfway through, because you'll have no idea what's going on. Like I said, I watched it from beginning to end, and I still have no idea what's going on. So definitely watch it all the way to the end. But yeah, like, I really think, like, this movie, I definitely think there's something in this movie for everybody, for sure. So definitely watch it. Let me know what you think. Share your thoughts with me. Always curious to know what you guys think about it. But this has a strong recommendation from me. It is such a strange movie, but it came out at just the right time, too. With Spider-Man No Way Home, and then we got the Multiverse of Madness, the Doctor Strange movie, coming out in a couple weeks. In many ways, I mean, I don't know if this was by design or if it was just pure coincidence, but I mean, this was a good time for the movie to come out, so yeah, I say give it a shot and let me know your thoughts. All right, so moving on to the next topic, we had the premiere this week of the new Thor Love and Thunder trailer, which releases on my birthday, evidently. So that's awesome. I didn't even know about that until I looked it up today. Yeah, so out of all the Avengers movies, I would say the Thor films are probably my least favorite. The first Thor it's good. It just feels like your generic superhero film, so I don't really dislike it, but there's not a lot to it, in my opinion. It's pretty basic, but I like it okay. Dark World was pretty mediocre. I mean, there was some pretty good heartfelt moments between Thor and Loki in that film, but overall I thought it was a pretty forgettable movie, and probably one of the MCU's, not their better film, in my opinion. Thor Ragnarok, amazing, fucking loved it. I feel like the Thor movies work better when he has other characters from other MCU movies in them. So like in that one, he had Hulk, he had, I know there was another character too. I can't remember. Oh yeah, is his name Korg, the rock guy? I think he's voiced by Taika Waititi. He's great in there. I like him a lot. I feel like Thor works better when he has other characters to play off of. Same thing with the Hulk as well. But I liked Ragnarok, so... And in this movie, Thor's basically traveling with the Guardians. We see them in the trailer, and it looks like the overall plot for this movie is, it looks like Thor is basically trying to find inner peace. I think at one point during the trailer, he even says that his days as a superhero are pretty much over, so it sounds like in this he's almost looking at maybe potentially passing the torch. So I'm kind of wondering if maybe we're going to get some pretty big emotional scenes from this movie, where maybe we see Thor kind of, maybe not die, but maybe kind of go off and do his own thing. I mean, it would kind of make sense. I mean, it sounds like, from what I've heard from some of the executives, like from what I've heard from meetings with executives at MCU, it sounds like they're not going to bring the Avengers back, at least not like how we saw them. So it sounds like they're going to come back, but in sort of a different form, and that these one-off movies might be more commonplace in the MCU moving forward. So I kind of wonder, especially with Captain America and Iron Man being gone, I do wonder if maybe this is going to be kind of Thor's last big, hurrah before he hangs up Mjolnir. So we'll see. I do like that he's traveling with the Guardians in this movie, and we do see a little bit of that. We get to see Peter Quill, who almost looks like he's playing sort of I almost kind of want to say like kind of a guide for Thor in this movie. We see him giving him some pretty big, advice throughout the trailer, where he's kind of helping advise him on how to kind of move on with his life. So, which leads to some pretty comical moments. I love where he's having that heartfelt scene with Thor, and Thor's just kind of looking at him. That was great. We do get to see, looks like Russell Crowe is going to be in this movie as Zeus, so that's going to be cool. I don't think we got the best look at him, but still, I mean, I like Russell Crowe. I think he's a good actor, and it's cool to see a big actor like him in a movie like this. I've said this before, like I like seeing these bigger name actors in these MCU movies. I think it's really cool, and I'm definitely curious to see Crow playing Zeus in this movie. So I don't know a whole lot about the Thor comic books, so I'm not sure how this is going to play out. I thought I read somewhere that Zeus is a villain in the Thor universe. I could be wrong about that, so please don't hate me if I get this wrong. If that is the case, I think Crow could definitely do that. I think he can play a good villain. So yeah, I'm curious to see, like, once more trailers come out, like how he's going to portray that character. Another big thing that I heard about this movie is that apparently Christian Bale is confirmed to play the main villain of the film, who is Gore the Butcher, who apparently is supposed to be like a super powerful alien who essentially travels the universe and kills gods, basically. So, I mean, that makes sense in this movie. He's going to come after Thor. One thing I'm curious about in this movie is, since the Guardians are going to be in the film, I wonder if this is going to lead into the third Guardians movie, and if we're going to kind of see maybe a little bit of what's going to happen in that film. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, MCU's pretty much, they're pretty much the ones that made the whole post-credit scene famous. They kind of started that whole trend, so I'm sure I'd be very surprised if this didn't lead into, some kind of teaser for the next Guardians film. So we'll see about that. But yeah, I like Christian Bale, and of course this isn't going to be his first superhero film. I mean, he was obviously The Dark Knight, so this is not going to be his first rodeo when it comes to superhero films, but it's kind of funny to see him go from, a DC character to now playing, he was a DC hero, one of the arguably the most famous DC hero, to now playing a MCU villain. So I'm curious to see how he's going to look and kind of how his character is going to be portrayed in this movie. So again, not familiar with Thor comics, so I don't know a whole lot about Gore the Butcher. It's kind of funny watching these one-off MCU films now after Thanos and the Infinity War and Endgame films. It's kind of hard to picture a villain being a threat to the Avengers anymore, even though I know in these films they're all kind of split up. They're not fighting as one anymore, but it's just like, compared to Thanos, like some of these villains just don't feel as threatening anymore. But even so, I'm still curious to see this movie. In some ways, I kind of feel like maybe this almost kind of feels like a return to some sense of normalcy before the pandemic hit, because I remember I saw Endgame, I think it came out in 2019, and that was not too long before COVID hit. And then it kind of felt like after that, we really didn't get a whole lot in the way of MCU or superhero films for years because of the pandemic and production getting pushed back. So it's kind of nice in a way to see a familiar face like Thor and the Guardians on the big screen again. I'd be lying if I said that didn't bring a smile to my face, so I'm definitely happy about that. And then, of course, the big reveal at the very end of the trailer, it shows Natalie Portman, who apparently is going to be taking up the mantle as the new Thor. We see her wielding Mjolnir, and she has the Thor outfit with the armor and the helmet on, as she looks at Chris Hemsworth in the trailer, and then it fades to black. So I definitely think that we're potentially going to see, Thor passing the torch on to somebody else, which is definitely going to be interesting. One thing I kind of wonder about is, since they've already introduced the multiverse in the MCU, I kind of wonder if maybe this isn't going to be him in another universe where he sees, is it Jane Foster? Where he sees Foster wielding Mjolnir, but maybe he'll come back to his regular universe and he'll still be the Thor there. I'm not sure. I'm very curious to see how that goes. Because I think he still has both the hammer and the axe that he got at the end of Endgame. So, but yeah, I'm definitely curious about this. Since it comes out on my birthday, I guess I have to see it now, since I'll probably be off work that day anyway. But yeah, I'm excited to see this for sure. Like I said before, I think he works better when he has other characters to play off of in the MCU. And in this one, he's got the Guardians, who are my favorite MCU characters. So I think that definitely makes for what I think is going to be a fantastic film. So I'll definitely be checking this out when it releases. Alright guys, I think that's going to be all I have for today. Once again, I am on Anchor, Spotify, YouTube, and you can also follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Alright guys, later.